What is up, everybody? Jay Costa here. Welcome back to the channel. Today in this video, I kind of wanted to share with you before Memorial Day weekend an unscripted housing market update. Kind of what I'm seeing in the data that's being released currently, what I see out on the ground as a local real estate agent here in northern New Jersey, and kind of not where I think we go from here. I will share that with you, but really more importantly, what I think we need to look at in regards to determine or predict where we go from here. Because the data that I'm seeing right now is starting to show some weakness, a good amount of weakness in the housing market. And that doesn't just mean for real estate agents. It could also mean for home buyers and the price and the value of your home, which everyone thinks so highly of. So let's get to the video. First, before I get started, you guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. As I said, my name is Jay Costa. I'm a real estate agent and investor here in northern New Jersey, right outside of New York City. And if you get any value or enjoyment out of this video at all, please smash that like button down below. And also, if you don't like this video, if you completely disagree with me, let me know in the comment section why you think I'm an idiot. I appreciate all comments, and I like to see what you guys think about my thoughts, about the data, and if you're seeing anything different in your market. So starting about 2 months ago, I'd say, February, March, I started noticing something. I've been in real estate for about 7 years now, and every year, as I've grown my business, especially, every year around February or March, I start getting people that I've contacted in the past to reach out to me. Okay, they look to either buy a house in the upcoming spring market. Winter's over here in New Jersey, spring's coming, and they say, we want to look for a house now that it's nicer out, or we want to sell our house and find somewhere else now that it's nicer out. It's a spring market, very, very seasonal real estate industry is, right? Especially here in the Northeast. I noticed something about 2 months ago, and then 1 month ago, and then even still kind of recently. The amount of people reaching out to me is way down. Now, granted, it was way high this time last year, so you figure maybe that was an outlier, but it is way down now. And I started noticing this, and I would bring it up to other real estate agents, as well as friends and family, and they would look at me like I had 3 heads on my shoulders, okay? They say, what are you talking about? I am busy as ever. Supply and demand, supply and demand. Housing prices are not going down. It's a hedge against inflation. Let me tell you guys something, okay? I'm a real estate agent, so I feel like I could say this. 90% of real estate agents have no clue what they're doing and no clue what they're talking about. The top 10% of real estate agents is where you want to be. And the top 10%, if I had to guess, probably do 90% of the transactions in this country. So if you're listening to someone in the top 10%, okay, I could understand. But that bottom 90%, which is obviously the vast majority, don't listen to them because they're just repeating what they heard someone say in the office or just repeating something to try to convince you to either buy or sell. Let's start with what realtors always talk about and like to always cite, supply and demand. Obviously, the past 2 years, we've had excess demand, a crazy amount of demand, and a crazy low amount of supply, low amount of inventory. Okay, that is all true, and that made home prices go up very substantially, going up, let's say, 20% each of the last 2 years nationwide. Crazy numbers, okay? Usually it's historically, only about maybe, depending on where you live, about 5% a year. Crazy numbers, right? And we are always told by other real estate agents that this cannot reverse course because we just have not kept up with supply, with building homes. Some of that is true, but not enough to support certain markets going up 40, 50% in a span of 20 months in home prices. That is not sustainable, and that will come down. I'm going to share why with you in this video. So supply and demand. Let's talk about the demand first. If you've been living under a rock, I will let you know that the interest rates on a mortgage have skyrocketed since the beginning of the year, let's say. They were about 2.5%, 3%. Right now they're about 5.25%, and they hit a peak of about 5.5%. And they could go up higher, okay? That is not going to not affect the housing market, and it already has. Every 1% that the interest rate goes up on a 30-year mortgage, that affects 10% of the purchasing power for a buyer. That affects the housing market. That affects what a buyer can pay. And this wasn't unforeseen. This is the point of interest rate hikes. The point is to get demand down, get that excess demand down to a lower level. So that excess demand as of right now is gone. You're starting to see this already with pending home sales down significantly across the country, with showings. Showing Time just shared information in regards to how many showings there are actually happening, which is a good indicator of kind of just the activity in the market. The amount of showings this time this year compared to this time last year is down 29%. This is a drastic shift in the housing market. You also see it in the most recent data that came out only a couple days ago about new home sales. New home sales, they were expecting to be about 750,000, was only like 540,000 or 580,000. That is a huge miss. Huge miss, and it could be an indicator for a potential recession going forward. So I just laid out for you the reasons why the homebuyer demand, the excess homebuyer demand, is gone. Homebuyers in this market have mostly decided to stay out and wait it out. Okay, and frankly, I don't blame them after the last 2 years of missing out on houses going for 50, 100 grand over asking, and then now interest rates are that much higher and they just can't afford it. And even if they can, they're like, you know what, this is crazy, I'm out. I'll wait, I'll rent another year or two, it doesn't matter to me. So let's talk about the supply end of it. A lot of people say that the supply end of it is not going to go up for a couple different reasons. They cite that first, a lot of issues that we have in regards to supply are because that we have not kept up in regards to building homes in this country compared to the demographic shift that we've had in this country. Some of that is true. It's too difficult to build homes, believe it or not. The states, at least here in New Jersey, I've built homes before. The state, the local government, they make it very, very difficult in order to obtain permits. They make it very difficult in a long, drawn-out process, way longer than it needs to be. So we do need to build more homes in this country. That is true. But the difference is not enough to support 20% growth the past 2 years in home price appreciation. It's not enough to cause that. Second, they cite that because interest rates are up now, that homeowners that either bought or refinanced in the last 2 years, who are paying 2.5% or 3% or something like that, are never going to sell their house and then go buy a house at 5.5%. I have said this in the past because there is some truth to it. But what's missing from the calculation here is that just because you sell doesn't mean you need to go buy. People can try to time the market with their own house and where they're living, especially if they have no kids yet or are in their middle ages where their kids are out of the house. They could sell their house and rent for a while. Okay, just because they're selling doesn't mean they have to go buy. Another issue that people leave out of this calculation is just because you own a property doesn't mean you live in it. We've heard a lot of complaining, frankly, the last 2 years about investors and investment groups going in and scooping all these homes up that were for sale and leaving the little guy out of it. Well, what's stopping those investors from trying to sell at the peak right now, seeing that the market's about to take a downturn, like we're discussing in this video? What's stopping them from putting their house on the market right now in large droves? Really nothing, almost nothing. So you don't need a huge percentage of homeowners to put their house on the market in order to see a major supply and demand shift in the housing market. So obviously it's still very early here, but also obviously we're starting to see a bit of a shift and a bit of an inflection point here in the housing market. You're first starting to see it in new listings. Now, I have been keeping track of new listings for a while now, since I really started to see that change in regards to people reaching out to me a couple months ago, that lack of demand and that lack of activity going on, especially compared to last year. I said, wow, something may be going on here. So I started to pay attention to new listings coming on the market. Now, real estate is always a local business. It's a local industry. What happens in my market may not be happening, probably is not happening in yours. Each market's different. But what we do know is the past couple years, there's been some specific markets that have appreciated in value way more than any other market. A couple of those are places like Las Vegas, places like Boise, Idaho, and places like Austin, Texas. You're starting to see new listings come on the market that breaks the trend of kind of what's normal seasonally. You're seeing these huge spikes in new listings coming on the market very quickly. So if you start getting a flood of new listings on the market and demand, that excess demand is gone, and maybe even demand is lower than it should be in a normal situation, what is that going to do to this whole supply and demand calculation? Well, when demand is down and supply goes up, the home prices are going to come down. You're also starting to see this in the data in certain markets with price drops. So price drops are getting to be way more of a concern in some of these local markets. Some of these local markets are showing like a 4 or 5% price drop, meaning 4 or 5% of listings have to drop their price. Now, I'm a little hesitant to put all my eggs into that basket because I would figure those are probably just sellers that put their house up for a crazy amount, thinking they can ask for whatever they want, and they don't get any activity. The days of a seller putting their house up for almost whatever they want and getting offers, multiple offers, is over. There's going to be a very, very drastic correction in price, especially in some of these areas. And I think some of these areas that were the most overinflated the last 2 years, you're going to start seeing it first. And you're starting to see it in price drops. You're starting to see it in new listings. Also, I think you're going to start seeing it in second home markets as well. And that brings me to my main concern in the housing market right now, and that is fear. You saw fear being used to pump the price up of houses the last 2 years. That is the FOMO, fear of missing out. Now I'm afraid if we start seeing prices to start declining a little bit and all of a sudden the media catches hold of it, okay, what is that going to do to the fear of a homeowner who just bought their house 6 months ago or a year ago, okay, and is already struggling a bit because of inflation? Everything is more expensive. Gas is more expensive. You got to heat and cool your home. It's more expensive, right? What is that going to do, that fear of, oh my God, what if it goes down 40% like it did in 2008? You add in the fact that the stock market has been on a downward spiral really since the beginning of the year. People are going to walk around feeling way less wealthy than they were a year ago. And I want to repeat what I said earlier. This was predictable. We all know that this was going to happen. That's the point of raising interest rates, is to get demand for homes, get demand for everything to go down to tamper down inflation, right? So we saw this coming. But when the stock market goes down 20, 30, 40, some of these stocks are down 70% if you're going with some of these really risky growth stocks. What is that doing to the 28-year-old who just had $200,000 in his stocks and put everything in these stocks, and now it's down to 100? What does that do to that 28-year-old? Is he going to be less likely to purchase a home, more fearful that the home prices are going to drop? Is he going to be less likely to stay in his home or more likely to sell it? I think so. Now, lastly, I kind of want to cover something in regards to foreclosures. Obviously, in 2008, there was a ton of foreclosures. Do I think that there's going to be a huge rush of foreclosures just like 2008? And you see home prices dropping by 40%. No, I don't think we're going to see that. And obviously the main reason is the average credit score for a home buyer then compared to a home buyer now is much different. The average credit score in 2006, I believe, was probably about 650, and now it's probably 780. It's a huge difference. You have a much higher quality borrower when purchasing a home now. So what I'm talking about here is not end of the world scenario kind of like 2008. What I'm talking about here is anyone that's bought a home within the last couple of years can certainly afford it. But I'm afraid that they bought the home because they had fear of missing out as home prices were going up. And I'm also afraid that with recessionary fears, with inflation, everything costing more, and a very obvious inflection point in the housing market, as well as the stock market taking a huge drop since the beginning of this year, and people feeling less wealthy overall, I'm afraid that they're going to be fearful that we're going to have another 2008 on our hands and put their house on the market. I think we're going to see a very, very low volume, low growth at best housing market until the end of this year and into next year, because the demand is not coming back until interest rates go back down. And the Fed seems pretty set on keeping to raise interest rates in order to combat inflation. They are pretty set on doing that until inflation is back down to like their target goal of like about 2%. And now it's like 8.5%. So we have a long way to go in this. Would I be surprised if there is a 15% drop in the housing market from now until next summer? No, I wouldn't be surprised. But it could be only 5%. It could be 10%. If it's only 5 or 10%, that's not a. It sounds crazy, but that's not a huge deal. If you were to sell your house, it costs money to sell your house. Real estate is not very liquid. So if you want to go sell your house, you're going to be paying transfer fees, you're going to be paying commissions, you're going to be paying repairs, you're going to be paying a lot of stuff. It's going to cost you 8%, 7% to sell your house. So if the market only goes down 10%, if it takes 8% to sell your house, that's not worth it. But it could be more and it could be less. But I do not see home prices going up within the next year at all. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, to see them go down a, marginal to above marginable amount. That is it for today, guys. Those are my thoughts. Sorry if it came out as rambling a little bit. I tend to ramble. I apologize. That's why I usually try to keep my videos pretty scripted, but I kind of want to just share with you my unscripted thoughts on what the housing market's doing right now, because me personally, I'm making some changes. I'm going to share with you those changes in a little bit, and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Where's the housing market going from here? Do you agree with me, or do you disagree with me? And yeah, until next time, guys.